In the dusty archives of the Archaeological Survey of India in New Delhi, a leather-bound journal from 1921 contains the first sketches of mysterious seals, discovered by archaeologist Daya Ram Sahni at a site called Harappa in the Punjab region of British India. The seals, carved from steatite and bearing undeciphered pictographic scripts alongside images of bulls, unicorns, and other enigmatic symbols, represented the first tangible evidence of what would eventually be recognized as one of the world's most sophisticated yet enigmatic ancient civilizations. When Sahni carefully brushed away the accumulated sediment from these small rectangular objects, measuring approximately 2 inches in length, he unknowingly unveiled the material culture of a Bronze Age society that had flourished across the vast alluvial plains of the Indus River system between approximately 3,300 and 1300 BCE. The seals themselves, numbering in the thousands as subsequent excavations would reveal, were crafted with remarkable precision using copper tools to carve intricate designs into the soft steatite stone, which was then heated to achieve a lustrous white surface that could accommodate the deep red cinnabar paste used to create impressions on clay tablets and other materials. Each seal typically featured a brief inscription in the still-undeciphered Indus script, consisting of between 2 to 17 characters, drawn from a repertoire of approximately 400 distinct signs, suggesting a complex writing system that may have recorded administrative, commercial, or ritual information crucial to the functioning of this ancient urban civilization. The archaeological context in which these seals were discovered, often found in association with standardized weights, measures, and pottery assemblages, indicated their use in extensive trade networks that connected settlements across an area larger than modern-day Pakistan and northwestern India, encompassing roughly 1.5 million square kilometers of territory. The systematic excavation techniques employed by Sahni and his contemporaries, including the careful documentation of stratigraphic layers and the precise mapping of architectural features, revealed that these seals belonged to a material culture characterized by extraordinary urban planning, sophisticated drainage systems, and standardized brick manufacturing that suggested a level of administrative coordination unprecedented in the ancient world. The discovery sites themselves, initially limited to Harappa and subsequently expanded to include Mohenjo-daro, revealed through painstaking archaeological investigation the remnants of cities that had been constructed according to precise geometric principles, with streets laid out in cardinal directions and residential blocks separated by wide boulevards that could accommodate wheel traffic and the movement of large numbers of people and goods. The material assemblages recovered from these early excavations, including pottery sherds decorated with geometric patterns, bronze implements fashioned using sophisticated metallurgical techniques, and standardized weights carved from local stone according to a precise binary system, provided compelling evidence for a civilization that had achieved remarkable technological and administrative sophistication. During the 3rd millennium BCE, modern archaeological techniques, including radiocarbon dating, thermoluminescence analysis, and paleobotanical reconstruction, have confirmed that the Indus Valley Civilization, also known as the Harappan Civilization after its type site, represented one of the world's earliest urban civilizations, contemporary with ancient Mesopotamia and Egypt, but covering a geographical area far more extensive than either of these better-known Bronze Age societies. The environmental context reconstructed through sediment core analysis, paleoclimatic data, and geomorphological studies indicates that the Indus Valley region during the Harappan period was characterized by a more humid climate than exists today, with extensive riverine systems providing abundant water for agriculture, urban consumption, and the maintenance of sophisticated hydraulic infrastructure that included wells, reservoirs, and drainage networks of remarkable complexity and engineering sophistication. The archaeological evidence suggests that this civilization emerged gradually from earlier Neolithic and Chalcolithic cultures that had been developing agricultural techniques, pottery production, and metallurgical knowledge in the Greater Indus region for several millennia prior to the establishment of the fully urban Harappan cities, indicating a long period of cultural and technological development that culminated in one of humanity's most impressive early experiments in large-scale urban living and regional integration. The geographical foundations upon which the Indus Valley civilization developed encompass the vast alluvial plains created by the Indus River system and its major tributaries, including the Ravi, Chenab, Jhelum, and Sutlej rivers, which together formed a complex hydrological network that provided the essential water resources, fertile alluvial soils, and transportation corridors that enabled the emergence and sustenance of one of the world's earliest urban civilizations, the Indus River itself, originating in the Tibetan Plateau and flowing approximately 2,880 kilometers through modern-day China, India, and Pakistan before emptying into the Arabian Sea, created through millennia of seasonal flooding and sediment deposition, a broad fertile plain that stretched from the foothills of the Himalayas in the north to the Arabian Sea coast in the south, encompassing an area of extraordinary agricultural potential that could support dense populations and complex urban settlements. Paleoenvironmental reconstruction based on sediment core analysis, pollen studies, and geomorphological investigation indicates that during the Harappan period, roughly 3,300 to 1300 BCE, this region experienced significantly higher precipitation levels than exist today, with monsoon patterns that brought regular seasonal rainfall to areas that are now arid or semi-arid, creating environmental conditions that supported extensive agriculture, pastoralism, and the maintenance of large urban populations without the need for the massive irrigation systems that characterize contemporary Mesopotamian civilizations. The river systems themselves underwent significant changes during the Harappan period, with paleochannel analysis revealing that several major rivers, including the now extinct Saraswati River system, provided additional water resources and fertile alluvial deposits that supported numerous Harappan settlements whose ruins are now located in areas far from major water sources, indicating the dynamic nature of the hydrological landscape that shaped Harappan settlement patterns and economic strategies. Geological studies of the region reveal that the Indus Valley possessed abundant natural resources that proved crucial for Harappan technological and economic development, including deposits of copper ore in Rajasthan and Baluchistan that supplied the raw materials for sophisticated bronze metallurgy, extensive limestone quarries that provided building stone and raw materials for lime mortar production, and salt deposits along the coast that supported food preservation, leather processing, and long-distance trade in this essential commodity. The coastal regions of the Harappan territory provided access to marine resources, including fish, shellfish, and sea salt, while also serving as harbors for maritime trade networks that connected the Indus Valley with Mesopotamia, the Persian Gulf, and possibly more distant regions, as evidenced by the discovery of Harappan seals, pottery, and other artifacts at archaeological sites throughout the Arabian Peninsula and Mesopotamia. The topographical diversity of the Greater Indus region, ranging from the fertile alluvial plains of the river valleys to the rugged hills and plateaus of Baluchistan and the arid regions of Rajasthan, provided the Harappan civilization with access to a wide variety of natural resources and environmental niches that supported different economic activities and settlement types, from large urban centers in the fertile river valleys to smaller towns and villages that specialize in particular crafts, resource extraction, or pastoral activities. Archaeological survey and excavation throughout this vast region has revealed a settlement hierarchy that reflects sophisticated understanding of environmental potential and resource distribution, with major urban centers strategically located at points where they could control river crossings, trade routes, and access to essential resources, while smaller settlements were positioned to take advantage of specific environmental opportunities or to serve particular functions within the broader economic network of the Harappan civilization. The monsoon climate that characterized the Harappan period brought seasonal rainfall that supported extensive dryland agriculture as well as supplemental irrigation systems, creating agricultural surpluses that could support non-agricultural specialists including craftspeople, merchants, administrators, and other urban dwellers whose activities contributed to the complex economic and social systems that distinguished Harappan civilization from earlier Neolithic and Chalcolithic cultures. In the region, modern climate modeling and paleoclimatic reconstruction suggest that the Harappan civilization benefited from relatively stable climatic conditions during its mature phase, approximately 2600 to 1900 BCE, with consistent monsoon patterns that provided predictable water supplies for agriculture and urban consumption, though evidence from the later Harappan period indicates increasing climatic variability and aridity that may have contributed to the eventual transformation and decline of the urban Harappan system. The geological history of the Indus Valley region reveals a complex process of alluvial deposition, river channel migration, and tectonic activity that created the landscape upon which the Harappan civilization developed, with archaeological investigation of buried paleochannels and ancient river courses providing crucial evidence for understanding how environmental change affected Harappan settlement patterns, agricultural strategies, and ultimately the long-term sustainability of this remarkable urban civilization. The archaeological evidence for the earliest phases of what would eventually become the mature Harappan civilization reveals a complex process of cultural development and technological innovation that unfolded over more than a millennium, beginning with the early Harappan or Ravi phase around 3300 BCE, and gradually evolving into the fully urban civilization that archaeologists recognize as the mature Harappan period by approximately 2600 BCE. Excavations at key sites including Harappa, Kalibangan, and Remandiri have revealed stratigraphic sequences that document this gradual transformation, with the earliest levels containing evidence of small agricultural settlements characterized by mud brick architecture, handmade pottery decorated with simple geometric patterns, and tool assemblages that included both stone implements inherited from earlier Neolithic traditions and increasingly sophisticated copper and bronze artifacts that demonstrate growing metallurgical expertise. The pottery assemblages from these early phases show clear continuity with earlier Chalcolithic traditions in the region, while simultaneously displaying innovations in firing techniques, surface treatment, and decorative motifs that would eventually evolve into the standardized ceramic traditions characteristic of mature Harappan civilization. Archaeological analysis of settlement patterns during the early Harappan period indicates a process of gradual population aggregation and social complexity, with smaller villages giving way to larger settlements that displayed increasingly sophisticated planning and the emergence of craft specialization, as evidenced by the discovery of dedicated workshop areas for pottery production, metalworking, and bead manufacturing. That suggests the development of economic systems based on specialized production and exchange rather than simple subsistence agriculture. The transition from early to mature Harappan culture is marked archaeologically by the appearance of several key innovations that would become hallmarks of Harappan civilization, including the development of standardized weights and measures based on precise binary and decimal systems, the emergence of the distinctive Harappan script with its characteristic pictographic and linear elements, and the adoption of standardized brick sizes and construction techniques that enable the large-scale urban planning projects that distinguish mature Harappan cities from earlier settlements in the region. Excavations at Kalibangan have provided particularly detailed evidence for this transitional period, revealing a sequence of occupational phases that document the gradual development of urban planning concepts, with early levels showing relatively simple rectangular structures giving way to more complex architectural layouts that incorporated the sophisticated drainage systems, standardized construction modules, and precise geometric planning that would characterize mature Harappan urban design. The material culture assemblages from transitional sites show increasing standardization in pottery forms, decorative motifs, and functional categories, suggesting the development of shared cultural norms and possibly centralized production systems that distributed goods across the expanding Harappan cultural sphere. According to standardized specifications and quality controls, technological innovation during this transitional period is documented through the archaeological record by the appearance of increasingly sophisticated metallurgical techniques, including the production of bronze alloys with consistent tin content, the development of lost wax casting methods for creating complex metal objects, and the manufacture of standardized tools and weapons that demonstrate both technical expertise and systematic quality control in production processes. The development of long-distance trade networks during the early Harappan period is evidenced by the discovery of raw materials and finished goods from distant sources, including lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, shell from coastal regions, and copper from ore deposits in Rajasthan and Baluchistan, indicating the establishment of exchange systems that would eventually support the extensive commercial networks of the mature Harappan civilization. Archaeological evidence for increasing social complexity during this formative period includes the appearance of more elaborate burial practices, with some graves containing multiple pottery vessels, metal objects, and ornamental items that suggest emerging social differentiation. Though the relatively modest nature of these grave goods compared to contemporary Mesopotamian and Egyptian elite burials indicates that Harappan society may have developed along different lines with less extreme social stratification. The gradual emergence of urban planning concepts during the early Harappan period is documented through excavations that reveal experimental approaches to settlement layout, drainage management, and public architecture that would eventually crystallize into the sophisticated urban systems of mature Harappan cities, suggesting a process of trial and error over several centuries that ultimately produced one of the ancient world's most advanced examples of city planning and municipal management. The mature phase of the Harappan civilization, spanning approximately 2600 to 1900 BCE, witnessed the full flowering of one of humanity's most remarkable experiments in urban planning, technological innovation, and regional integration, with archaeological evidence revealing a complex of cities and towns that covered an area of over 1 million square kilometers and supported populations that may have totaled several million people living in settlements connected by sophisticated trade networks, shared cultural practices, and remarkably standardized material culture traditions. The two most extensively excavated mature Harappan cities, Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, provide detailed evidence for urban planning concepts that were centuries ahead of their time, featuring grid-patterned street layouts with major boulevards running north, south, and east-west that divided each city into rectangular blocks, comprehensive sewerage and drainage systems that channeled wastewater from individual houses through covered drains to main sewers that carried effluent outside the city walls, and standardized construction techniques using uniformly sized fired bricks that enable large-scale architectural projects and ensured structural consistency across different buildings and districts. Archaeological investigation of these cities has revealed sophisticated municipal infrastructure, including public wells that provided clean water to residential neighborhoods, public baths and bathing platforms that suggest elaborate concepts of ritual purification and community hygiene, granaries and storage facilities that could accommodate large quantities of agricultural surplus, and workshop areas where specialized craftspeople produce pottery, textiles, metalwork, and other goods according to standardized specifications that maintain quality and consistency. Across the entire Harappan cultural sphere, the residential architecture of mature Harappan cities demonstrates remarkable attention to privacy, comfort, and sanitation, with typical houses featuring central courtyards surrounded by rooms of various sizes, private wells and bathing areas, connected to the municipal drainage system, and multi-story construction that maximize living space while maintaining the geometric regularity of the urban plan. The famous Great Bath at Mohenjo-daro, a large rectangular structure measuring approximately 12 by 7 meters, and constructed with specially fired bricks sealed with bitumen to prevent water seepage, exemplifies the sophisticated engineering capabilities of Harappan architects and suggests the importance of ritual bathing and water management in Harappan religious and social practices. Archaeological analysis of Harappan workshops reveals extensive evidence for specialized craft production, including the manufacture of standardized pottery, using potter's wheels and controlled firing techniques that produce ceramics of consistent quality and finish. The production of cotton textiles using sophisticated spinning and weaving techniques that created fabrics fine enough to be traded across vast distances, and the creation of intricate jewelry and ornamental objects using gold, silver, copper, and semi-precious stones obtained through long-distance trade networks that extended from Central Asia to the Arabian Peninsula. The standardization of weights and measures throughout the Harappan civilization represents one of its most remarkable achievements, with archaeological discoveries revealing stone cubes cut to precise specifications according to binary ratios that enabled accurate measurement of quantities ranging from small amounts of precious materials to large volumes of agricultural products, indicating administrative systems capable of maintaining consistent standards across hundreds of settlements spread over an area larger than many modern nations. The Harappan script, represented by thousands of inscribed seals, pottery sherds, and other objects, remains undeciphered despite decades of scholarly effort. But statistical analysis of the symbol frequencies and combinations suggests a writing system sophisticated enough to record complex administrative, commercial, and possibly religious information, with individual inscriptions typically containing between 3 and 17 characters, drawn from a repertoire of approximately 400 distinct signs that were combined according to consistent grammatical or syntactic rules. The material evidence for Harappan trade networks includes artifacts and raw materials from sources hundreds or thousands of kilometers from their find spots, including Afghan lapis lazuli found in Harappan jewelry, Mesopotamian cylinder seals discovered in Harappan cities, and Harappan seals, pottery, and other manufactured goods found at archaeological sites throughout the Persian Gulf region, indicating commercial relationships that connected the Indus Valley with the major civilizations and resource zones of the ancient world. The agricultural foundation of Harappan civilization is documented through paleobotanical analysis revealing the cultivation of wheat, barley, peas, sesame, and dates, along with evidence for early cotton cultivation that supported the textile industry, while faunal analysis indicates the domestication of cattle, water buffalo, and zebu that provided milk, meat, and draft power for agricultural and transportation needs. The social organization of the Harappan civilization presents one of archaeology's most intriguing puzzles, as the material evidence suggests a complex urban society with sophisticated administrative capabilities and marked economic specialization, yet lacking the obvious indicators of extreme social stratification that characterize most other Bronze Age civilizations, leading scholars to propose various models for understanding how Harappan society was organized and how power and authority were distributed within these remarkably uniform, yet extensive urban settlements. Archaeological analysis of Harappan residential architecture reveals relatively modest differences in house sizes and construction quality, with even the largest residential structures lacking the monumental scale and elaborate decoration that typically mark elite residences in contemporary Mesopotamian and Egyptian cities, suggesting either that Harappan society developed along more egalitarian lines than its Bronze Age contemporaries, or that social distinctions were expressed through different material markers that have not survived in the archaeological record. The absence of clearly identifiable palaces, temples, or monumental royal tombs in Harappan cities contrasts sharply with the archaeological signature of other early urban civilizations, leading some scholars to propose that Harappan society may have been organized as a merchant republic or confederation of city-states, governed by councils of wealthy traders and craft specialists rather than by individual rulers or hereditary dynasties. Excavations of major Harappan sites have revealed large public buildings that may have served administrative or ceremonial functions, including the Great Bath at Mohenjo-Daro and similar structures at other cities, but the interpretation of these buildings remains controversial, with some scholars viewing them as religious centers while others suggest they may have been secular meeting halls or facilities for community gatherings and public ceremonies. The standardization of material culture across the vast Harappan territory, including identical pottery styles, brick sizes, weights and measures, and urban planning concepts, implies the existence of sophisticated administrative systems capable of maintaining consistency and quality control across hundreds of settlements. Yet the mechanisms by which such standardization was achieved and enforced remain unclear, due to the undeciphered nature of the Harappan script and the absence of obvious governmental institutions in the archaeological record. Analysis of Harappan craft production reveals extensive evidence for economic specialization, with workshop areas dedicated to particular industries including pottery manufacture, metalworking, bead production, textile creation, and seal carving, indicating the existence of skilled artisan classes whose products were distributed throughout the Harappan cultural sphere, according to standardized specifications and quality controls that suggest systematic economic organization and possibly centralized oversight of production processes. The distribution patterns of luxury goods, including jewelry made from gold and semi-precious stones, elaborate pottery with sophisticated decorative schemes, and imported materials such as lapis lazuli and shell indicate that wealth existed within Harappan society and was expressed through the acquisition and display of high-quality manufactured goods, though the relatively wide distribution of such items compared to contemporary civilizations suggests that wealth may have been more evenly distributed among the urban population. Evidence for social differentiation in Harappan society comes primarily from burial practices, with excavations revealing cemeteries containing graves that vary in the quantity and quality of associated grave goods, though even the richest Harappan burials contain relatively modest assemblages compared to the elaborate royal tombs of contemporary Mesopotamian and Egyptian rulers, leading scholars to conclude that Harappan's social stratification, while present, was less extreme than in other Bronze Age civilizations. The role of religion in Harappan's social organization remains enigmatic, due to the undeciphered script and the absence of clearly identifiable temples or religious monuments, though iconographic analysis of seals and other artifacts reveals recurring motifs including seated figures and yoga-like postures, trees and animals that may have held sacred significance, and geometric patterns that may have had cosmological or ritual meanings, suggesting the existence of shared religious beliefs and practices that may have provided ideological unity across the dispersed Harappan settlements. The administrative capabilities demonstrated by Harappan civilization, including the maintenance of standardized weights and measures, the coordination of large-scale construction projects, and the management of extensive trade networks, clearly required sophisticated bureaucratic institutions. Yet the specific nature of these institutions remains unclear, with scholars proposing various models ranging from theocratic city-states governed by priest-kings to merchant republics administered by councils of successful traders and craft specialists. Archaeological evidence for the existence of Harappan administrative systems includes the thousands of seals that may have been used to mark ownership, authenticate transactions, or validate official documents, the standardized storage facilities, and workshops that suggest centralized economic planning and resource distribution, and the uniform urban planning concepts that indicate the ability to implement complex infrastructure projects according to consistent design principles across multiple cities and towns. The question of whether the Harappan civilization was unified under a single political authority or consisted of a loose confederation of autonomous city-states sharing common cultural traditions remains hotly debated among scholars, with the remarkable uniformity of material culture supporting arguments for centralized control, while the absence of obvious capital cities or imperial monuments suggests a more decentralized political organization than characterized other Bronze Age empires and kingdoms. The economic foundation of the Harappan civilization rested upon a sophisticated integration of agriculture, craft production, and long-distance trade that supported urban populations of unprecedented size and density, while maintaining complex exchange networks that connected the Indus Valley with resource zones and markets across a vast area extending from Central Asia to the Arabian Peninsula. Archaeological evidence for Harappan agriculture reveals a diversified system, based primarily on the cultivation of wheat and barley, supplemented by legumes including field peas and lentils, oil-producing crops such as sesame and mustard, and tree crops including dates that provided both food and raw materials for various industrial processes. The development of cotton cultivation represents one of the Harappan civilization's most significant contributions to world agriculture, with paleobotanical analysis confirming that the Indus Valley was among the earliest centers of cotton domestication and textile production, creating an industry that would remain central to the region's economy for millennia, and establishing technological traditions that influenced textile production across the ancient world. Harappan agricultural techniques included the construction of field systems, with carefully planned drainage and irrigation features, the use of the scratch plow for land preparation, and the development of storage technologies that could preserve grain surpluses for extended periods, enabling the accumulation of agricultural wealth that supported non-agricultural specialists and facilitated long-distance trade in both raw materials and manufactured goods. The domestication and management of livestock played a crucial role in Harappan economic systems, with archaeological evidence revealing the raising of cattle, water buffalo, and zebu that provided milk, meat, hides, and draft power, while the presence of domesticated chickens, pigs, and possibly camels added diversity to the protein resources available to Harappan populations, and contributed raw materials for craft production, including leather, bone, and horn that were fashioned into tools, ornaments, and other useful objects. Harappan craft production achieved levels of technical sophistication and standardization that were unmatched in the ancient world, with pottery manufacture employing potter's wheels, controlled firing techniques, and standardized forms that produce ceramics of consistent quality and finish that could be distributed throughout the Harappan cultural sphere, according to uniform specifications and aesthetic standards. The metallurgical achievements of Harappan craftspeople included the production of bronze alloys with consistent tin content, the development of sophisticated casting techniques for creating both utilitarian tools and decorative objects, and the working of precious metals including gold and silver into jewelry and ornamental items that demonstrate both technical skill and artistic creativity. Bead production represented one of the most important Harappan industries, with workshop areas revealing evidence for the manufacture of beads from a wide variety of materials, including semi-precious stones, shell, faience, and metal, using techniques That included drilling, cutting, polishing, and decorative inlay work that produced finished products of exceptional quality that were traded throughout the ancient world and have been found at archaeological sites from Mesopotamia to Southeast Asia. The textile industry, based on cotton cultivation and sophisticated spinning and weaving techniques, produced fabrics that were fine enough to be valued in long-distance trade networks, with archaeological evidence including spindle whorls, loom weights, and textile impressions on metal objects indicating the scale and importance of cloth production. In Harappan economic systems, evidence for Harappan trade networks comes from the discovery of raw materials and finished goods far from their sources of origin, including lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, turquoise from Iran, shells from coastal regions, copper from Rajasthan and Baluchistan, and gold from Karnataka, indicating exchange systems that connected the Indus Valley with resource zones across a vast geographical area and required sophisticated transportation and commercial organization. The standardization of weights and measures throughout the Harappan territory facilitated commercial transactions by providing consistent standards for measuring quantities of goods, with archaeological discoveries revealing stone cubes cut according to binary ratios that enable precise measurement of materials ranging from precious stones to bulk agricultural products, demonstrating administrative capabilities that could maintain commercial standards across hundreds of settlements spread over more than 1 million square kilometers. Harappan seals, numbering in the thousands and found throughout the civilization's territory as well as its sites in Mesopotamia and the Persian Gulf, appear to have served commercial functions including the marking of ownership, the authentication of transactions, and the validation of trade agreements, indicating the existence of sophisticated business practices and legal frameworks that supported long-distance commerce and protected the interests of merchants and other commercial actors. The distribution of finished goods throughout the Harappan territory reveals economic networks that could move products from specialized production centers to distant markets, with pottery, metalwork, jewelry, and textiles manufactured in particular. Cities or regions being found at sites hundreds of kilometers away, suggesting trade routes and commercial relationships that integrated the diverse settlements of the Harappan civilization into a coherent economic system. Archaeological analysis of Harappan storage facilities, including the great granaries at Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, as well as smaller storage structures at other sites, indicates systematic approaches to resource management that could accumulate and redistribute agricultural surpluses according to seasonal cycles and regional variations in productivity, providing economic stability that supported urban populations and enabled long-term planning for large-scale construction projects and commercial ventures. The economic success of the Harappan civilization is reflected in the scale and sophistication of its urban centers, the quality and standardization of its material culture, and the extent of its trade networks, all of which required economic surpluses sufficient to support specialized craftspeople, merchants, administrators, and other non-agricultural workers whose activities contributed to the complex economic systems that distinguish Harappan civilization from earlier and simpler agricultural societies in the region. The religious and ideological systems of the Harappan civilization remain among the most enigmatic aspects of this ancient culture, as the undeciphered nature of the Harappan script prevents direct access to their theological concepts, mythological narratives, and ritual practices, leaving archaeologists to reconstruct Harappan religious life through analysis of iconographic motifs, architectural features, burial practices, and ritual objects that provide tantalizing glimpses into belief systems that may have influenced later South Asian religious traditions. The iconographic evidence from Harappan seals, pottery, and other artifacts reveals a complex symbolic vocabulary that includes images of animals, both real and fantastical, human figures in various poses and activities, tree motifs that may have held sacred significance, and geometric patterns that could represent cosmological concepts or ritual diagrams, though the specific meanings and religious context of these symbols remain subjects of scholarly debate and speculation. One of the most famous and controversial Harappan artifacts is the so-called priest-king sculpture from Mohenjo-daro, a limestone figure wearing a robe decorated with trefoil patterns, and a headband that may indicate royal or priestly status, though the identification of this figure as either a secular ruler or religious leader remains uncertain, reflecting the broader difficulty in distinguishing between political and religious authority in Harappan society. The Proto-Shiva seal from Mohenjo-daro depicts a seated figure surrounded by animals, interpreted by some scholars as an early representation of the Hindu deity Shiva, in his aspect as Pashupati, lord of animals, though this interpretation remains controversial and reflects the broader question of whether Harappan religious concepts influenced later Hindu traditions or whether apparent similarities result from coincidental iconographic parallels. Archaeological evidence for Harappan ritual activities includes fire altars found at several sites that may have been used for ceremonial purposes, though their specific functions and the nature of associated rituals remain unclear due to the absence of textual evidence that might illuminate their religious significance and ceremonial contexts. The Great Bath at Mohenjo-daro, with its carefully constructed waterproof basin and elaborate drainage system, has been interpreted by many scholars as evidence for ritual bathing practices that may have held religious significance in Harappan culture, possibly reflecting concepts of purification and spiritual cleansing that would later become central to Hindu religious practice, though alternative interpretations suggest the structure may have served secular purposes related to public hygiene or community gatherings. Harappan burial practices provide important evidence for religious beliefs and concepts of afterlife, with excavations revealing cemeteries where the dead were typically interred in extended position, accompanied by pottery vessels, personal ornaments, and other grave goods that suggest beliefs in some form of continued existence after death. Though the relatively modest nature of most Harappan burials compared to contemporary Mesopotamian and Egyptian practices indicates different concepts of death, afterlife, and the relationship between worldly status and posthumous existence. The standardization of burial practices across the Harappan territory, with similar grave types, orientations, and associated goods found at sites separated by hundreds of kilometers, suggests shared religious beliefs and funeral customs that provided cultural unity across the diverse settlements of the Harappan civilization. Though regional variations in burial practices indicate that local traditions also influenced mortuary behavior within the broader Harappan cultural framework. Animal imagery plays a prominent role in Harappan iconography, with seals and other artifacts depicting bulls, elephants, rhinoceros, tigers, and various birds that may have held symbolic or religious significance, while the famous unicorn motif that appears on numerous Harappan seals may represent a mythological creature with sacred associations, though the specific religious meanings of these animal symbols remain unknown due to the undeciphered script that might have provided explanatory context. The apparent absence of monumental temples or clearly identifiable religious architecture in Harappan cities contrasts sharply with contemporary Mesopotamian and Egyptian civilizations, leading some scholars to suggest that Harappan religious practices may have been centered in domestic contexts or community spaces, rather than in specialized religious buildings, though this interpretation may reflect archaeological limitations rather than actual religious organization. Evidence for fertility cults and mother goddess worship in Harappan religion comes from numerous terracotta figurines depicting women with emphasized sexual characteristics, often interpreted as representations of fertility deities or ritual objects associated with agricultural and reproductive ceremonies, though the specific functions and religious context of these figurines remain subjects of scholarly debate and interpretation. The possible connection between Harappan religious concepts and later South Asian traditions, including Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism, remains one of the most intriguing questions in the study of ancient Indian religion, with scholars debating whether practices such as yoga, meditation, animal worship, and ritual purification have roots in Harappan culture, or developed independently in later periods through different cultural processes and religious innovations. The role of water in Harappan religious and ritual life is suggested by the elaborate bathing facilities found in Harappan cities, the prominent position of wells in residential and public areas, and the sophisticated drainage systems that manage water resources with remarkable care and attention, possibly reflecting religious concepts that viewed water as sacred or ritually significant in ways that would later become central to Hindu religious practice and South Asian cultural traditions. The technological achievements of the Harappan civilization represent one of the most remarkable aspects of this ancient culture, encompassing innovations in urban planning, architecture, metallurgy, crafts production, and agricultural techniques that were centuries ahead of their time and established technological traditions that would influence development throughout South Asia for millennia to come. The urban planning concepts implemented in Harappan cities demonstrate sophisticated understanding of municipal engineering, with grid-patterned street layouts that maximize efficient movement of people and goods while providing equitable access to public facilities, comprehensive sewerage and drainage systems that manage wastewater from individual houses through covered drains to main sewers that carried effluent outside residential areas, and standardized construction techniques using uniformly sized fired bricks that enabled large-scale architectural projects and ensured structural consistency across different buildings and districts. The Harappan mastery of hydraulic engineering is evidenced by their sophisticated water management systems, including the construction of wells with carefully fitted stone linings that prevented contamination and collapse, elaborate drainage networks that channeled rainwater and domestic wastewater through covered channels to prevent flooding and maintain sanitary conditions, and reservoir systems that could store water for use during dry periods, demonstrating technological capabilities that would not be matched in the region for many centuries. After the decline of Harappan civilization, archaeological analysis of Harappan construction techniques reveals advanced understanding of structural engineering principles, with buildings constructed using standardized brick modules that were fired in kilns achieving temperatures of over 1,000 degrees Celsius, creating building materials of exceptional durability and consistency that have survived for over 4,000 years, while the use of lime mortar, bitumen waterproofing, and sophisticated foundation systems indicates engineering knowledge comparable to much later historical periods. The standardization of weights and measures throughout the Harappan territory represents a remarkable technological and administrative achievement, with stone cubes cut to precise specifications according to binary ratios that enabled accurate measurement of quantities ranging from small amounts of precious materials to large volumes of agricultural products, demonstrating mathematical concepts and precision manufacturing techniques that required sophisticated understanding of geometric principles and quality control procedures. Harappan metallurgical technology achieved levels of sophistication that were unmatched in the contemporary world, with bronze production involving the systematic alloying of copper and tin in consistent ratios that created tools and weapons of superior strength and durability, while the working of precious metals including gold and silver employed techniques such as granulation, filigree, and repousse that created jewelry and ornamental objects of exceptional artistic and technical quality. The development of sophisticated pottery production techniques in Harappan civilization included the widespread use of potter's wheels that enabled the creation of vessels with uniform wall thickness and symmetrical forms, controlled firing in kilns that achieve consistent temperatures and atmospheric conditions for optimal ceramic quality, and decorative techniques including painting, incision, and applied ornament that created pottery of both functional excellence and aesthetic appeal. Harappan textile technology represents one of their most significant contributions to world civilization, with the domestication and cultivation of cotton leading to the development of spinning and weaving techniques that produce fabrics of exceptional fineness and quality, including the creation of mordant dyeing processes that could produce color-fast textiles in a variety of hues using both plant and mineral-based colorants. The precision manufacturing capabilities demonstrated by Harappan craftspeople are exemplified by their bead production industry, which employed sophisticated drilling techniques using copper and bronze tools to create perfectly round holes in semi-precious stones, shell, and other materials, while achieving standardized sizes and shapes that enabled the mass production of jewelry and ornamental objects that were traded throughout the ancient world. Archaeological evidence for Harappan transportation technology includes the discovery of wheeled vehicles, as evidenced by toy carts and wheel fragments found at various sites, indicating the use of bullock carts for overland transport of goods and people, while the construction of harbor facilities at coastal sites such as Lothal suggests the development of maritime technology capable of supporting long-distance sea trade with Mesopotamia and other distant regions.